Shalom, my name is Lipkin. Welcome to Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland. Today I have a special friend. It's his last day in Israel, and I'm going to show him a very, very special site that's very close to my heart.
Aaron, how are you?
Josh!
It's great to see you.
How are you?
Thanks for taking the time today. I'm very excited to see this place.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
Well, where are we going to go today?
Well, before I tell you, I suggest we should go to the water tower right here and do a lookout.
Sounds good. Following you.
Let's go. This is definitely a very good place to watch and see where we are. Look at this beautiful view.
Wow.
You can really, really see the whole country right from here. This water tower services Beth-El. Beth-El is a Jewish village right beside us that was established in 1978. This is one of the first villages that was established after the 1967 war, the Six-Day War. And so let's start, seeing what we have around us. So first of all, let's start with the Baal Chatzor mountain. This is the highest point in Samaria. It's about 3,300 feet above sea level.
Oh, wow.
And you can literally see the whole land from the height of this mountain. And today, as you can see, there is a special thing on that mountain.
Yeah, what in the world is that?
Well, these are strange-looking radars, I agree.
Right.
This is an Israeli Air Force base.
Really?
Yeah. A control base that basically gives a 24/7 picture of the skies of Israel. Watching if there are any flights or any airplanes that are coming into the land that are not authorized to come.
Wow.
And the reason why the Israeli Defense Forces have an army base here is especially because this place is a strategic place. It's a strategic location. It's in the middle of the land, and it's on the highest point in the central mountain ridge.
Is there anything biblically significant on the hill?
Well, that's a very good question, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Awesome.
If we continue on to the east, then you see an Arab village called Bitin. And that's another very, very important biblical village. Does it sound familiar to you, Bitin?
Barely.
Well, there's a very, very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
For the past 3,000 years, the villages and towns of Israel kept their names. So when we came after 2,000 years of exile to the land, when we came back home, as the prophets declared in the Bible, it wasn't hard for us to look for the places that are mentioned in the Bible.
Right.
Just to give you an example, where is Bethlehem?
Bethlehem.
At Bethlehem, exactly. Do you have any other examples in mind of this phenomenon?
Must be something around Bethel.
Bitin, very good. Bitin, very good. Bitin is believed to be the village that preserves the name Beth-El that we read in the Bible.
So that's what it is.
Yes. And but that's not enough, and we'll talk about that. How do we really prove that is biblical Bethel?
Right, because it doesn't sound quite close enough to pull it off just by that.
Exactly.
Right.
Other examples that we know of places that kept the name are, for instance, Jericho, called by the Arabs Aricha, in Hebrew Yericho, sound very much the same. And the Arab village of Mukhmas and Mikhmash, same names that were kept through the ages for us to come back after 2,000 years of exile and come back home.
That's where it is. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
I would never dreamed that would have held for so long. Like, that's history just right here.
It's a big miracle.
Right.
It's a really big miracle. And so when the Jews came here after the Six-Day War, We wanted to reestablish our presence in the heartland of Judea and Samaria. All we had to do is look for the Arab village that had the biblical name and establish a Jewish village beside it with the biblical name. And
so is that what happened here?
Exactly. We're standing right beside the Jewish village of Beth-El, which is situated close to the Arab village of Bitin. And you can find this example all over Judea and Samaria and all over Israel.
So, Aaron, biblically on a biblical Bible map, where would we be right now?
We are exactly on the border between the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Ephraim. If we would be standing here 3,000 years ago, this would be the northern border of the tribe of Benjamin. And you remember that Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh are the descendants of Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife.
Yes.
So as I said, the village of Bitin, or biblical Bethel, is very, very important. And we can open the Bible and see exactly the stories that happened in this place. You remember what's the first story that happened in Bethel?
Jacob's dream?
Jacob's dream is one of them, one of the most important.
Right.
And that's why we're here, but we'll talk about that later. The first time that Bethel is mentioned is in the book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 8. We read that Abraham is coming from the north, from the area of Elon Moreh and Shechem, and he's walking towards us, towards this area. And we read in verse 8, "Thence he went on to the hill country east of Beth-El, and pitched his tent between Beth-El on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the Lord by name. Thus Abraham journeyed by stages towards the Negev." So we read that Abraham pitches his tent in this area, right by the Arab village of Bitin, and he builds an altar, which is a very, very important action. He proclaims God's name in the land. And after doing that, he continues on south, and then he goes to Egypt. Remember the story with Pharaoh and Sarah?
Yeah.
And then he comes back out of Egypt, and he returns to this area, right here. From the Negev, he journeyed by stages to Beth-El, to the place between Beth-El and Ai, where he had pitched his tent in the beginning, where he had set up an altar on the first occasion and had invoked the Lord by name. Remember what is the following story after Abraham arrives here?
What happens next? There's something with Lot, maybe?
Yes, very good, very good. Your knowledge is very good in the Bible. We read of a quarrel between the sheep herders of Lot and Abraham. And this story is actually a very important story. It's the first time that there is a threat for the promise of God to Abraham. As you remember, God promised Abraham this land. And suddenly there is a problem, and there is a feeling of division. Abraham comes to Lot and says to him, "You are my relative. I don't want to fight you." Let's read it from the Bible. "Let there be no quarreling between us, between my herdsmen and yours, for we are close kinsmen. The whole country is there in front of you. Let us part company. If you go left, I will go right. If you go right, I will go left." What did Lot choose?
South.
Not a very good place he chose, did he? And so Abraham is left alone. And we read immediately after Lot leaves that God appears to Abraham. Abraham receives a prophecy. After Lot and Abraham had parted, the Lord said to Abraham, "Raise your eyes and look into the distance, from the place where you are, north and south, east and west. All the land you can see, I will give to you and to your descendants forever." God reaffirms the promise to Abraham after this crisis, this family crisis that he experienced. Do you know where God spoke to Abraham?
I guess this is a different time than Genesis 12, because that's up near Shechem. But this time, I'm not sure.
Well, it says that Abraham returned back to Bethel from Egypt. So
somewhere here.
Somewhere here, exactly.
Where?
Well, the Bible doesn't say exactly where. Luckily, we have another ancient source. It's called the External Scroll of Genesis. A Bedouin child in the 1940s walks in the area of the Dead Sea,
right,
and he sees a cave. He throws a stone into the cave, and he hears something break. He goes into the cave. What does he find?
Dead Sea Scrolls.
The Dead Sea Scrolls. What are the Dead Sea Scrolls? It's the whole Bible without the book of Esther, and also some other scrolls that are not included in the Bible, but we only heard of them in other places, mainly church writings. And the External Scroll of Genesis is one of those scrolls. And it's in Aramaic. It's written in Hebrew letters, but it's a different language, Aramaic. Very, very widely spoken in the ancient world.
Right.
And it's basically Abraham's private diary.
No way. They have Abraham's personal diary?
Yes, it's Abraham's private diary. And he describes his voyages in Israel from first hand. And I would like to show you that scroll.
I don't want to see it.
This scroll right here
My goodness.
is in Aramaic.
Mm-hmm.
We can actually read it as Israelis because it's in Hebrew. It's Hebrew letters.
Same letters.
Yes, but the language is Aramaic. So, Abraham writes, "But I was dwelling then on the mountain of Beth-El, and it grieved me that Lot, the son of my brother, had parted from me. God appeared to me in a vision of the night and said to me, 'Go up to Ramat Hatzor, which is to the north of Beth-El, the place where you are dwelling. Lift up your eyes and look to the east, west, south, and north, in all this land which I am giving to you and your descendants forever.' The next day I climbed up to Ramat Hatzor, and I looked at the land from this height, from the river of Egypt to Lebanon and Sinir, and from the great sea to Horan. And he said to me, 'To your descendants I shall give all this land, and they will inherit it forever.'"
So there it is.
Where did Abraham stand? Where did God reveal himself to Abraham?
Where those funny towers are up there.
Exactly.
That's right where it was.
Yes. This is the highest mountain in Samaria, and now we understand why Abraham and Lot chose a place like that to stand and look at the land and divide it, because you can literally, as we said, you can literally see the whole land from that point. And here it says specifically that after Lot parted from Abraham, God spoke to Abraham while he was standing on this mountain and promised him the land.
That's wild.
Can you imagine Abraham standing on that mountain looking at us right now?
Wow, that's unbelievable.
And isn't it ironic that today there is an army base of the descendants of Abraham that is also looking over the land?
Watching over the land. Now, how could that be?
Yes.
That's amazing.
There are actually a number of other stories, very interesting stories, that happened in the Bible on this mountain. Do you remember Absalom,
Yes.
the son of King David?
Long hair.
Long hair.
Yes.
That was caught in a tree.
Yeah.
So the story says that Absalom killed his brother Amnon over the affair of their sister on the slopes of that mountain.
Really?
Look it up in the Bible. Another story that happened here is the story of Abiyam in the book of Chronicles, when he talks to the rebellious tribes of the north, basically asking them to return to the house of David, to return and to unite the kingdom again. And last but not least, I'm sure you've heard of Hanukkah.
Sure.
So Hanukkah is my favorite holiday. And the big hero of Hanukkah, Judah the Maccabee, died while battling the Greeks on that mountain as well.
No way, really?
Yes, right here. So this mountain is a very, very important mountain.
Lots of things happened here.
Yes. But that's not the only reason why we're here, Josh. We are here to go to a very special site, but in order to get there, we need to get off the water tower.
Following you.
Let's go. right now in a very, very ancient site that is called by the Arabs Altis, which means ancient. There are many, many archaeological points of interest in this area, but the first thing I want to talk about is trees. Trees. I'm sure you've been here a few days and you're leaving tomorrow, but during your stay in Israel, you saw many, many areas that are very barren.
Right.
The trees are either young or medium size. Israel is in general a barren land because trees have been chopped down during the ages by the different civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
And only recently, since 1948, trees have been replanted and the land is being revived. The only places where you see ancient trees are holy places.
Okay.
The local Arabs don't chop trees in places that are considered holy by them. And when we're standing here in this site, this ancient tree right behind us is a very, very obvious example of that. We were talking about the most ancient oak tree in Israel. Some say it's 1,000 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Now that's old.
Yes, very old. For Israel, very, very old. Now, this tree was badly damaged 2 years ago by heavy snow that we had here in the winter, and they had to put some restraints around the tree
that's why
to keep it straight. And wherever you see in Israel an ancient tree that was not chopped down, you know that this is a holy place that carries some sort of a holy tradition. And usually, near the ancient tree, there is a tomb of an Arab sheikh. Let's go and see it. So let's pretend we're archaeologists.
Can do that.
And we come here, and so this place really looks like a big mystery. We have an ancient tree, 1,000 years old, which we as archaeologists know represent
something ancient.
An ancient place, a holy place. Mm-hmm. And the next thing that is very obvious, that really stands out, is this building behind us.
Right.
What we see here as archaeologists is even more puzzling. We see one structure, which is actually made of two structures.
Right.
The first structure on the left is a Muslim house of prayer, a small mosque called a maqam in Arabic, dating from the early Arab period. Okay, that is approximately 1,200 years ago.
Still pretty old.
Very old. When does American history start?
Yeah.
200, 300 years ago.
Yeah.
In Israel, everything is thousands years old. So we have a Muslim house of prayer, and adjacent to it, with the arches, is another structure which is thought to be, as we see as archaeologists, a Christian chapel from the time of the Crusades, about 900 years ago.
So the Christians didn't tear down the mosque. They built next to it.
Exactly. Huh. And the Muslims that came afterwards used the Christian chapel
again
as an entrance to the mosque.
How crazy.
Yeah. But what you see here is two houses of prayer that tell us that this place has a certain significance, certain holiness, certain spirituality to it that is held by both Christians and Muslims. Now, inside the Christian chapel is a tomb of an Arab sheikh from about 200 years ago. And what the local Arabs did was to come here because of the holy tree and the tomb of the Arab sheikh and pray for health and for livelihood. And they kept the tradition of holiness during the last 200-300 years. So we have an ancient tree. We have a mosque and a church from 1,000 years ago. And we're continuing this survey as archaeologists, and the next thing we see is this tunnel right here, this cave. As archaeologists, we look at it and we see a 2,000-year-old cave from the Second Temple period. This whole area actually was used for agriculture, and you can find a number of threshing floors. Actually, I've counted at least 3 of them, and they used this cave for storage or maybe for burial. We don't know yet, but we have to excavate.
We should excavate.
Yes. But this was not a village. This was some sort of a farming area. And this is not the only thing that is 2,000 years old that is that ancient. Look at the view, Josh. We are right now in a modern storage facility that was built probably in the past 100 or 200 years by the local Arabs.
Okay.
And they would store here olives or different types of crops. But what's really interesting is what's under this storage facility.
Something under here?
Yes. We are standing actually on much more ancient structure that we date as archaeologists to the Israelite period.
Whoa.
We're talking about the time of King David, King Solomon. That's 3,000 years ago, approximately.
That's old.
Yes. So this is not just an ancient building or what we see as maybe a watchtower, but it's actually a part of a larger building that we see that might be even an army outpost or a fort.
Wow.
And you can see how wide the surrounding walls are. You can see that there were inner rooms here. This is not just a regular wall. These are fortifications. This is a big wall that was put there in order to defend this place. So this actually makes this whole place a bigger riddle. We've seen the mosque, we've seen the church, we've seen the storage facility from 2,000 years ago, the ancient tree, and now we're standing in a watchtower belonging to an ancient fort from 3,000 years ago. What happened here, Josh? What happened here?
I have no idea what happened here.
Let's continue on. Maybe we'll get some more answers. Yeah, let's go. Amazing, huh?
Whoa. What is it?
This is a family tomb from 2,000 years ago, from the Second Temple period.
Tombs. Doesn't look much anything like tombs of today.
Yeah. They used to bury people differently 2,000 years ago. This is actually a family tomb. You see a number of entrances that would bring the corpses inside, and the bones would be left after a few years, and they would take the bones and make a second burial. This was another cave here that collapsed, and this is just one family tomb out of at least 30 that were found here.
And that's how many were found, and it hasn't been excavated yet.
Exactly. And last week we had archaeologists here who believe that there are many more tombs that haven't been discovered yet, which even makes the riddle, the mystery bigger. Why did so many people choose to be buried in this place? Why? This actually reminds us of the Mount of Olives, where people chose to be buried there because of the belief in the end of times, and Messiah, and resurrection. And so people wanted to be buried here for some reason. What is that reason, Josh?
I have no idea, but I hope you get some answers because I'm really getting interested.
Let's go on. And voila. Look at this.
What do you know?
Beautiful cave.
Beautiful big bud.
Come in. What do you think this cave was used for?
I see some press of some sorts, it seems.
What we know as archaeologists, by coming in here, is that this is very clearly a cave that was used for 2 things. Wine and olive oil making.
Really?
Right here.
The same place?
Yes. And what you see here, just behind you, is a winery. This is where they would step on the grapes in order to make wine.
Much simpler than nowadays, huh?
And I think much more fun.
Yeah.
And right in front of us and all around us is an olive press with weights that would crush the olives in order to extract the olive oil from the olives.
Wow.
And this is an ancient installation for wine and olive making, dating from as far as 2,500 and 2,000 years ago. And this cave was actually excavated.
This part, oh wow.
Yes. And so, again, you're wondering, what's going on here? What's going on in this site? What have we seen until now?
Let's see. We have a church, we have a mosque, burial tombs, ancient trees, and now this press. Olives, wine, a lot of things.
Right.
Is that everything?
A lot of historical, archaeological, ancient evidence.
A lot.
A lot. And the question is, what does this say about this place?
A lot of people maybe been here.
We have a lot of people here. We have people that are attracted to this place for agricultural, farming reasons. We have people that are attracted to this place for burial reasons. With your permission, I would like to jump from this place to the Bible.
You got it.
And I have a question for you.
Yes.
After the Israelites come into the land, where do they set the tabernacle?
Shiloh, right?
Many people think that the tabernacle stood first at Shiloh, and then after Shiloh was destroyed, it moved on to Nov and Gibeon, and then later on to Jerusalem. But if we read the Bible, we have a story that really breaks this understanding. If we open the book of Judges, chapter 20,
right,
we read about the story of the concubine. Just very quickly to describe it, a woman is molested by a certain city in the tribe of Benjamin, by Benjaminites, and the tribes of Israel declare war over the Benjaminites because they're not willing to give over the people that did it. And so we read in the book of Judges, chapter 20, the description of the armies of the tribes of Israel gathering before the battle against the tribe of Benjamin. And always remember, this is a civil war. This is a war between brothers. The Israelites at once moved on to Beth-El, and there they sought an oracle from God, asking, which of us shall attack Benjamin first? So this is actually kind of weird, because we always thought that the tabernacle stood at Shiloh.
right.
So why are the Israelites coming to Beth-El to ask God for guidance? The Israelites are told that the tribe of Judah needs to go first and fight. And after losing the battle, the Israelites come back. And where do they go? The Israelites, the whole people, went back to Beth-El, where they sat before the Lord, lamenting and fasting until evening. And they offered whole offerings and shared offerings before the Lord. In those days, the Ark of the Covenant of God was there, and Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, served before the Lord. So there is a clear statement here in the Bible that the Ark of the Covenant and the high priest were at Beth-El. And the scholars believe that this story of the concubine belongs to the beginning of the period of the Judges. So during the time of the Judges, at a certain time, the Ark of the Covenant and the Tabernacle were at Beth-El. Beth-El is a very important site. Later on, we read that King Saul, looking for the donkeys, is being told by Samuel that two people will meet him on his way back home. They're coming from the tomb of Rachel and going to worship God. Where? At Shiloh? At Beth-El.
Here.
Exactly. So Beth-El is a very important site. It's a holy site during the time of the Israelites 3,000 years ago. For some reason, this was a holy place.
That is very interesting.
But why? Why is it a holy place?
Right.
That takes us to the next spot. So we're back on the top, on the summit of this plateau that we started on earlier. And we are standing inside some sort of an ancient building. As archaeologists, we look at it and we assess that this is from the Israelite period, again, about 3,000 years ago. And then we continue on surveying this area, and we leave this find by itself, waiting for a real excavation. But what we can see from this is a large building. This building serves some sort of a public use of some sort, we don't know what. It has a rectangular shape.
Right.
And the size of this rectangular shape is the exact dimensions of the tabernacle.
No.
Yeah, the exact dimensions of the tabernacle.
Really?
Yeah. And so, what is this place? Let's go back to the Bible.
Okay.
You remember that King Solomon dies, and his son causes a split in the kingdom.
Yeah.
You have Judah and Benjamin on the south, and you have the 10 tribes of the north. You have war between these two kingdoms, the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Judah.
Right.
Because of the split, there is a separation, not just a political separation, but also a religious separation. Jeroboam decides to build 2 temples. Let's read about that. After giving thought to the matter, he, Jeroboam, made 2 calves of gold and said to the people, "It is too much trouble for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, Israel, that brought you up from Egypt. One he set up at Beth-El, and the other he put at Dan. And this thing became a sin in Israel. The people went to Beth-El to worship the one, and all the way to Dan to worship the other." So we read that King Jeroboam builds a temple, one of 2, in Beth-El. And we just read in the cave that the tabernacle stood in Beth-El during the time of the judges, which is before the time of Jeroboam. And so why did he do that? Why did he build the temple in Beth-El?
Sounds crazy. I don't know.
Because you have a temple in Jerusalem.
Right.
Jeroboam doesn't want his people to cross the border into Judah and be affected by the teachings of the house of David. So Jeroboam says to his people, I'm going to put my temple in the original place where the tabernacle stood. This is going to be a rival site to the temple in Jerusalem. And as we mentioned, Beth-El has always been a site, a holy site for the Israelites to come and worship. This temple, maybe the building that we're standing in right now, in the exact dimensions of the tabernacle, this building right here was destroyed a few centuries afterwards by King Josiah.
Right.
Let's read about that. At Beth-El, he dismantled the altar by the hill shrine made by Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into sin, together with all the hill shrine itself. He broke its stones in pieces, crushed them to dust, and burnt the sacred pole. Now listen to this. When Josiah set eyes on the graves which were there on the hill, he sent and took the bones from them and burned them on the altar to desecrate it, thus fulfilling the word of the Lord announced by the man of God when Jeroboam stood by the altar at the feast.
Fits?
Fits! We found tombs from the Second Temple
Empty.
period, but many tombs saying that this is a burial place. This is a very, very ancient burial place. And I'm sure that if this place will be excavated, more tombs will be found, not just from the Second Temple period, but also from the First Temple period. So really, this really strengthens the assumption that this site, right here where we are, is the holy site that was used by the Israelites for centuries. Now, you should be asking me, Aaron, you spoke about the Arab village of Bitin.
Yeah.
We are not in the Arab village of Bitin.
No.
We are actually 2 kilometers out of the village. The village is all the way over there. So what's going on here?
Right.
A Christian pilgrim in the year 333, visited Israel, the land of Israel, in a religious pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm.
He came from France. We don't know his name. And so his name is the Anonymous Pilgrim of Bordeaux.
Okay.
And he came with his horse all the way through Europe and Lebanon and came into the land. And he wrote a diary, just like the diary that we read of Abraham, the
Okay.
personal diary. So he writes a diary about his voyage in the land, and he describes how he arrives in Bethel. And when he arrives in Bethel, the local residents of Bethel tell him, this is Bethel. And the place where Jacob dreamt the dream of the ladder,
Mm-hmm.
and where Jeroboam built his temple, is a mile away.
Makes sense.
A mile
Once
away.
again.
And so we are reaffirmed by the testimony of the Anonymous Pilgrim of Bordeaux
Right.
that the holy site that all the biblical stories that we read about in the Bible is located outside of the village, not just outside, but a mile away. A mile away. And so the only place around the Arab village of Bitin that has so much extensive archaeological remains is this place right here. Isn't it amazing?
That is very interesting.
Now, watch this building right here. Directions are very, very important in religious buildings. The tabernacle is
Pointed toward
east to west.
east to west.
The temple, east to west.
Right.
This structure right here has no clear direction, but it's facing that direction right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where we're going.
Pass it on.
So Josh, we are standing on a threshing floor. This seems to be the central area of importance in this place. The building that we just saw,
Right.
that might be the Temple of Jeroboam, leads us in this direction to this threshing floor.
Faces here, huh?
Yeah. Now, to your left is the ancient tree,
Right.
and to your right is the mosque and church. So this is really the place where everything leads to, everything comes here.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened here? Why was the tabernacle brought here during the time of the judges? Why does Jeroboam build his temple here?
Right.
Why do people choose to be buried in this place in their hundreds?
Right.
Why is there a fort, a military fort that protects this area? Let's go back to the Bible. Jacob, our patriarch, we read that he goes to his uncle. Do you remember why he goes to his uncle?
Because he's looking for a wife.
Well, that's what Rebecca says to Isaac. You know, our son needs to find a bride.
Uh-huh.
But if we look at the Bible, we see that there's another reason, probably the reason, why Jacob is going to his uncle. You remember that Jacob received blessings from Isaac, but rather someone else should have gotten these blessings.
Yes.
Who?
Esau.
Esau. And Esau heard that his brother got the blessings, and he was very, very, very angry.
Right.
He was so angry that he wanted to
Done with him.
kill his brother.
Right.
And he says, I will wait until my father passes away, and then I will kill my brother.
Right.
Rebecca hears that and says, Jacob, it's time for you to go. And Jacob is leaving his house, and he's going to his uncle. And I don't know about you, but when I read this story as a kid, I always saw Jacob, walking leisurely to his uncle,
Right.
stopping at Beth-El, having a great dream. But now when you look at the context of this story, thinking that Esau is looking to kill his brother, Jacob is not walking leisurely to his uncle. Jacob is running away for his life.
Yeah.
Now, let's read the Bible in that scope.
Okay.
Jacob set out from Beersheba and went on his way towards Haran. He came to a certain place and stopped there for the night, because the sun had set. And taking one of the stones there, He made it a pillow for his head and lay down to sleep. He dreamt that he saw a ladder which rested on the ground with its top reaching to heaven, and angels of God were going up and down upon it. The Lord was standing beside him and said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. This land on which you are lying I will give to you and your descendants. They shall be countless as the dust upon the earth, and you shall spread far and wide, to north and south, to east and west. All the families of the earth shall pray to be blessed as you and your descendants are blessed. I will be with you, and I will protect you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done all that I have promised. Jacob woke from his sleep and said, Truly, the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. Then he was afraid and said, How fearsome is this place! This is no other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Why does Jeroboam build this temple here?
Sounds like you read this.
Why did the Israelites bring the tabernacle here during the time of the judges? Why do people choose to be buried in this location, which is not a village? The closest village is 2 or 3 miles away. People choose to be buried in this hilltop for a reason. What is that reason? This is the house of God. This is the gate of heaven.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah. And we continue reading. Jacob rose early in the morning, took the stone on which he had laid his head, set it up as a sacred pillar, and poured oil on top of it. He named that place Beth-El, but the earlier name of this city was Luz.
Make you scratch your head a little.
Suddenly it brings all the points together. Everything connects.
Right.
Jacob is running for his life. He's not going into Beth-El. He's looking for a place that he could stay, maybe camp out at night. He's putting stones under his head. Not straw, not wool, anything, just stones. Jacob is camping out because he's afraid that he's being chased, and he is in the most terrible situation in his life. And just like his forefather Abraham, having to split the country between him and Lot, and receiving a divine revelation to assure him that the land is his and everything will be okay, Jacob, his grandchild, goes through the same problem. He was given a promise that this land will be his. And suddenly he has to go to exile. He cannot stay here. The promise that this land will be his is damaged. And at the exact time that this happens, God reveals himself to Jacob and reassures him that this land will be his and that he will safeguard him and keep him and will return him back home. Our forefathers did things. They went to places, they said things. Bad things happened to them, good things happened to them. Our sages say that what happened to the forefathers is a sign to what's going to happen to their descendants. And just like Jacob went to exile, left the land, apparently looking like the promise is gone or damaged or forsaken, the fact that God appeared to him and said, Jacob, I will be with you, I will guard you, and I will bring you back home, is going to be the same story that will repeat itself with his descendants. And so we see the Israelites going to Egypt for exile and coming back, and we see the day, I'm the son of an American Jew that came from Europe, and an Egyptian Jewess that came from Spain, Turkey, Morocco.
So amazing.
After 2,000 years, my parents came back to Israel. I was born here. I see here the fulfillment of the biblical story and what the sages are saying, that this is a reoccurring action, and that I came back home safe to my home, to my land. And the second thing that I think this site carries, and not just this site, but this whole area that we're in, the hills of Benjamin are the shoulders where God dwells. And this dwelling is not just a physical dwelling of the Ark of the Covenant and the Tabernacle in Bethel and in Nov and Gibeon, but It's also the place where people prophesize. It's where God takes His Spirit and gives it to men. It's where people hear God's voice, a clear voice. Abraham stood on the Chatzor Heights just behind you and heard God's voice. Jacob slept possibly on this rock right here and saw the ladder and the angels and heard God. And so I ask you to pray that God will return His prophecies back to the land, that Jews will be able to yet again hear God talking to them and assuring them and telling them what's going to happen. So thank you for coming and visiting this site. I hope you enjoyed it.
Aaron, it's been a fantastic day. Well, most certainly, just the hope that one day, the nation of Israel would once again walk in that destiny, prophecy and all the things.
Thank you for coming, and have a safe travel back home. And see you soon, hopefully.
I'll be back.
Thank you. Shalom. I want to thank you for joining Josh and I in touring this very, very special site. This site is one of many in Judea and Samaria that usually tour groups do not go to. I invite you to come with Lipkin Tours to visit special sites that are off the beaten path, sites that are very, very important and are in the Bible, places where you can stand and feel God. I invite you to come to Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland, where prophecy was told and where prophecy is fulfilled. Thank you.